A board of inquiry was held. Approximately 2 months later, the results of that investigation were made public. The investigating panel of 3 admirals found that, quote, deeply rooted problems and structured deficiencies in major training areas contributed to the disastrous launching. And as you all know, no one in CDC told the petty officer manning the target acquisition console that he was participating in an exercise. There was no routine checklist for fire control safety on board that ship, counter to regulations. The unannounced anti-ship missile exercise was just that, unannounced, contrary to regulations. The ship's CO was not informed, the ship's XO was not informed. Throughout the incident, the investigating panel found that there was little or no, quote, following of standard Navy training procedures. In December, 5 officers and 3 enlisted men received either punitive letters of reprimand, letters of admonition, or non-punitive letters of instruction. No courts martial. The captain of the ship was not relieved. Rather, he took part in a regularly scheduled change of command. Approximately a week before, he went in front of an admiral for captain's mast. Accountability. In an interview with the ship's captain, he said, quote, "It was an accident. I'm in this because I'm the CO and not much more. It's too bad," unquote. Let me tell you, members of all the services, that if our nation ever perceives that we are reluctant to be accountable for our performance, then we are going to be in serious, serious trouble. There can be no excuses given to the citizens of this great nation of ours if we foul up. We must be accountable. Let me bring this home from a personal standpoint. I was a young captain on my way back to Vietnam for my second tour of duty. My wife drives me up to Norton Air Force Base. Going to get on a Flying Tiger Airlines plane and go to Da Nang. Wife drops me off, kisses me goodbye. She is not a happy camper, I can tell you. She drives back down to San Diego. I walk into the hangar where they've got all the individuals that are going to be going on that bird. And I'm standing there and I'm looking around and I see this little PFC. Not little, a young PFC. And he's carrying a workout bag and it says, "San Diego, the city in motion." Well, I'm from San Diego. So I, of course, sidle over to him and start talking to him. His eyes are a little big because he's kind of worried. And I ask him if he, in fact, is from San Diego. Yes, he is. He tells me his name is PFC Cameron, and we have a good dialogue. He, in fact, lived about 3 blocks from me. He was a communicator. Word comes, get on the plane. We get on the plane. We're flying over the ocean. I see Cameron maybe 2 or 3 times during the flight. I'm going up to make a head call. He's going up to make a head call. I'm going up to get a drink of water, what have you. Catch his eye. He looks at me. I look at him. We go on back to our seats. Plane lands in Da Nang. If you've seen the movie Good Morning Vietnam, Robin Williams gets off the plane in Da Nang and it's, you know, hot and dusty and noisy. That's exactly what it was. Got off that plane and this big burly master sergeant says, okay, everybody going to the 1st Marine Division and going to stay here in Da Nang. Here, all you poor guys that are going up north to the 3rd Division, go over and stand behind there. 130 is going to pick you up and take you up there. I trot on over because I'm going up to the 3rd Marine Division. Here comes old Cameron with his bag. His eyes, I mean to tell you, are this big. I said, I better get a hold of this kid. And I get over there and I say, you know, it's going to be all right. Don't worry. We're going to take care of this. We get on the plane, go up to Dong Ha. We separate. I'm given stewardship of Lima Company, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines. I go out to the company, I meet my first sergeant, monstrous guy, 6'6", 240 pounds. He takes me around the company area, says, here's where we're dug in, here's what it looks like. 2 days later, same big first sergeant comes walking up. He's like a mother hen. He's got a bunch of little chickies behind him. 7 or 8 new guys coming into the company. You guessed it. Number 1 in line. This time, all you can see is his eyes. PFC Cameron. I say to myself, for some reason, this guy keeps on entering in your life, so I better latch a hold of him. And I did, and I said to the first sergeant, I want Cameron to be my radio operator. And for the next 9 months, this young Marine PFC and I became so close, a closeness that can only come from times of stress and times of danger. And we shared everything. I mean, we shared not just our food, we shared letters, we shared dreams and hopes, and he became, over that period of time, like a son to me. At the end of the 9th month, I was called to my battalion commander's hooch, and he said, we're going to go up on Mutter's Ridge, and I want your company to go up and form a blocking position because we're going to have the rest of the battalion plus another battalion sweep down Mutter's Ridge, hopefully driving the enemy into you. I said, fine. Mutter's Ridge was not a great place to go, I will tell you. I mean, you go up there, you always got in a fight, so I mean, my heart wasn't exactly doing flips of joy, but I said, we're going to go up there and do it. Being a recent graduate of the Marine Corps Amphibious Warfare School and having my act together, of course, I got all my artillery positions, prep fires planned, had air on strip alert, and I felt good. Put my company in formation, 2 up, 1 back, my command group in the middle, and we started up a finger onto this ridge line. We got about a third of the way up, and we started taking sniper fire. Over our heads, you could hear the bullets kind of whizzing by. Got on the hook, started calling in artillery, felt very comfortable. All of a sudden, a loud crack. Same kind of crack you get when you're out on the rifle range and you're pulling butts and that, you know the bullet just went over your head. And I kind of ducked to the side because it went right by my ear. And I turned around, and Cameron was hard down. I mean hard down. And I bent down and I ripped open his flak jacket, and he'd taken a round right through the chest. And I mean, he was breathing, and you all, I'm sure, have heard of the term a sucking chest wound. That's what he had. And I mean, every breath he'd take, you'd hear this terrible wheezing sound, and instead of breathing through his mouth, it was breathing through his chest, and the blood was coming up, and it was bubbling, and I went, holy mackerel. I would drop down to my knees. And I whipped out my pressure bandage, and I put it on the kid's chest. And I said, hang in there. Hang in there. You're going to be all right. And you could see him start to gray, and his eyes start to flutter back, and he's going into shock. And I sat down and I pulled him onto my chest, right up against me. And I had his head in my left hand, I had that pressure bandage on, and I was just praying and saying, hang in there. You are going to make it. We're going to get you out of here. And all of a sudden, I was hit on the side of my head so hard that I fell to my side, and Cameron was dumped onto the ground. And standing above me was that big first sergeant I talked to you about. And he had his helmet in his hand, and he had just beat me across the side of my head. And he said, "What the hell do you think you're doing? You got a company in contact up there. That's who you're responsible for. What are you doing with this Marine? Get your butt up that hill and fight that company." Man, I'm going to tell you, I went up that hill so fast it wasn't funny. Got up to the top of the hill. Some unknown reason, we had no casualties except for Cameron. I'll never forget the feeling I had as we went around and put my men into their defensive positions, and I went back to where my CP was, and the first sergeant was there, and he says, "Skipper, I'm sorry I hit you." And I said, "Don't be sorry, First Sergeant. You were exactly right. You did exactly what you should have done. My responsibility was to fight the company. I was accountable for those people. You were exactly right." And then he said he didn't make it. And I said, what do you mean he didn't make it? He said, "Cameron, he didn't make it." And as he said that, he had tears running down his cheeks. This big first sergeant had tears running down his cheeks. I will tell you that 3-hour period drove into my soul the concept of responsibility and accountability. I see my time's running out, and I want to have some time for question and answer, so let me bring this home, if you'll allow me. Let me take you back into that rice paddy. Let me take you back to the rice paddy. Let me remind you, Lance Corporal Grable, he's laying there, he was hit for the first time. Question that has been in my mind ever since that happened and reoccurs and enters my mind often is, why didn't he just lay there? He's been hit by a .50 caliber round. He is, I'm telling you, had to be in intense pain, and he's laying there. Why didn't he just stay there? He has a wife. He has children. He had a wound that would get him home. He was on his way home. All he had to do was lay there. But he didn't. Why not? He got up and performed an act that he had to know was going to kill him. Why did he do it? In my opinion, he did it because flowing through his veins and tattooed across his soul were many of the principles that we've talked about today. Integrity, moral courage, loyalty to his people, responsibility, and accountability. Now, I'll tell you, he probably didn't have them packaged neatly in some list in his mind. But I will tell you, they were there, they were there, they were there. And if they are there for people like Lance Corporal Grable, then they damn well better be there in us. They better be there in us. For every class that goes through the basic school, I talk to them about some of the things we've just talked about. And I end up by asking them to be something that they probably never thought of being. And that is to be what I call a knight in shining armor in a day and age when people aren't interested in knights in shining armor. I ask them to be Joan of Arc in a day when people aren't interested in Joan of Arcs. I ask them to take a page out of the Bible and soar upon the wings of eagles. To be eagles. To not walk around down in the dirt of everyday life, but to soar above it. And I go crazy over this, and they kind of think I'm crazy anyhow. They say, gee, it's General Krulak again giving his eagle talk. But one day, about a week ago, some kid came up to me, some lieutenant, and he slipped a piece of paper in my hand, and I read it, and I said, I'm going up to the Naval Academy. I'm going to read this one little poem that he wrote. Think about this. There is a great battle that rages inside me. One side is a soaring eagle. Everything the eagle stands for is good and true and beautiful, and it soars above the clouds. Even though it dips down into the valleys, it lays its eggs on the mountaintops. The other side of me is the howling wolf. And that raging, howling wolf represents the worst that is in me. He eats upon my downfalls and justifies himself by his presence in the pack. Justifies himself by his presence in the pack. Who wins this great raging battle? The one I feed. The one I feed. Be eagles. You're about ready to be great leaders in your services. Be eagles and only feed the eagle. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm ready to take your questions. I will tell you, no holds barred. I will answer anything you ask. You may not like the answer. I tried to be a little bit provocative. Have at it. Bunch of cowards. Yes, sir. He's the plant. He's going to give me a plaque, too, right?
Sir, Midshipman Rudella, I was wondering, do you see a general decrease in holding people accountable nowadays? You gave two current examples. I was wondering if there is a general decrease nowadays, what are the reasons behind that? Or is it just publicity?
Good question. Question has to do with accountability. The examples please sit down. The examples I gave is, in fact, do I see a decrease in accountability, or do I believe that that the publicity is kind of driving what would appear to be a decrease? I will tell you unequivocally, I think there's a decrease in accountability. I think that we are into so many gray areas now of, well, you know, I wasn't there, or I was there, or blah, blah, blah. And I don't mean just Navy, I mean Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps. I think that there is absolutely no question that the days of holding people accountable for what they do and for what their commands do is on the decline. And I would state again that if we don't stop that decline, sooner or later the citizens of this great nation of ours are going to say, what the heck is going on? Why are these things happening? And why aren't people being held accountable for them happening? Yes, sir.
Sir Cadet Mills from West Point. You're talking about a lot of the problems and such. Understanding that the Army and the armed forces are changing, undergoing a big decrease, and in fact a big drawdown, as well as the whole world is changing, less of a bipolar world, and we're having a lot more problems. We don't know who our enemy is. What are some of the solutions that we can that can afford us to change this decrease in accountability? Is it more moral courage and integrity training, or is it things that you talked about in a tactical nature, where the acquisition officer, or whatever they call that in the Navy, sir, didn't know his job, or things like that? Do you think it's more of a moral base and we need more of that type of training, or do you think it's more tactical training, sir?
Okay, good question. I think the answer to the question, and for those of you who didn't hear it, the question had to do with what's kind of the cause of this lack of accountability, holding people accountable, and does it stem from what is happening in our world today, or does it go down into something more akin to the types of people we are, or what our nation looks like, and the fact that we're a microcosm of what makes up this nation of ours, or is it something else? That is a really good question and a hard one. I think it's probably a combination of all of those. I think that rather than saying they are necessarily a reason, I think that they are now being utilized more as an excuse, particularly the aspect of large organizations, Marine Expeditionary Units, large ships, large Army units, where something goes bad and you have this multiple chain that goes down, and it's very difficult to say, well, where does the buck stop? My point is, when you are given the stewardship, and notice I don't use the term command, you are stewards. When you are given stewardship of something, you become responsible and accountable, in my opinion. And that pretty well points the finger at the commanding officer, in the case I'm talking about, of the USS Saratoga. He should have been poleaxed, and he wasn't. Now, that ought to stir up some people up there, but I didn't tell you this, to say the commercial goes, I didn't promise you a rose garden. I think he should have been poleaxed. He's the guy who's responsible for the training regulations and standards on his ship. He didn't even have them. He was in violation of naval standards. The guy goes through a normal relief of command approximately a week before he goes to captain's mast. Give me a break. That's our problem. We, the leadership, me, Chuck Krulak, have to suck it up, have to have the moral courage to do the right thing. Captain should have gone But if you're asking me who I'm pointing the finger at, I'm pointing the finger at the admirals and the generals. Because we are the ones that are letting this slip through our fingers. Who should it matter to? It should matter to you all. It's your service. It's your Navy. It's your Marine Corps. It's your Army and Air Force. One of the points I try to get across is the mantle is being taken off of my shoulders. It's being put on yours.
Sir, Midshipman First Class Digg, in society today, you see rapists and murderers getting off, with 7-year sentences. You see Congress writing bad checks. You see the president admitting to immoral behaviors and was still elected. Who exactly is the military supposed to be responsible to, besides ourselves, if society accepts these kind of breaches in accountability?
I got a real easy answer to that, because you're all going to do it. You're going to raise your right hand, and you're going to say, I, Charles Chandler Krulak, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of which I'm about to enter, so help me God. Your responsibility is to the Constitution of the United States of America and what that Constitution represents. If there is a single place, a single bastion of change, it can be the military. The military has always been the bedrock of this nation. We are America's legions. We're the legions. We are Caesar's 10th Legion. It has been that way forever. The world collapses around us, and there should be one place that stands as a bedrock, and it is the military. You're a part of it. The Commander-in-Chief, the Joe Seabag from East Sedalia, Missouri, is not what is important. What is important is your nation, your Constitution, and that's what you swear allegiance to. That sounds abstract to you, but you ought to go back, open up the book, and read those words. It is very clear what that oath is to. It is not to people from the state of Arkansas. It's not to an individual. It is to a document and what that document represents.